You're in what, Costa Rica?
I'm in Costa Rica. I'm up in Guanacaste, about 3 blocks from the beach. So I'm wearing shorts at the
Wow,
moment.
rub it in. Well, I'm wearing pants, which is unusual for one of these as well. So rub it in even further. Thanks for taking the time with us today. I just feel like what you guys are talking about right now is speaking to a whole lot of people who have been fantasizing about vacation for quite some time. So we'll just dive right in. I guess for everyone who's watching the extended version of this on the web, this is the Senior Product Operations Specialist, Willis Orlando, with Scott's Cheap Flights. And I think that the first question I have for you is, and I think a lot of people are probably thinking about this, should I already be looking, or should I have already started looking if I am trying to fly in the summer this year?
Yeah, that is a great question, and a lot of folks kind of hold on and wait too long and end up kind of paying for it. And I think of it this way: when are bathing suits on sale? Right now. If you wait till April or May to get that swimsuit for your summer vacation, guess what? Everyone else is looking for one at the same time too, and prices go through the roof. But if you can snag one now in the off season, you're more likely to get a deal. And the same thing goes for cheap flights. Just this morning we saw early summer fares from Dallas to Greece for 484 round trip. If you wait until April, that price will be double. I can guarantee that.
Wow, that's a great fare. So I want to ask you this. A lot of people, obviously we've been through a couple of years of pandemic now. There's been so much uncertainty about what we can expect as far as openings go. And so you think, well, I mean, I can plan out this whole vacation, but is it really going to happen? For the first time, you all have predictions, and you even, and I love this, you put like a confidence interval with those predictions as to, how good you're feeling about it. But it seems like Scott's Cheap Flights is feeling pretty good about the idea that, Japan and Europe will be back open again and will be accepting visitors.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And one of the reasons why we did this is because throughout the pandemic, our job kind of shifted from just finding cheap flights for folks to also kind of being consumer advocates and helping folks navigate this very complicated landscape that is the pandemic, that is travel during the pandemic era. And our founder Scott got really, really good at these kind of things because he and I and we look at hundreds and sometimes thousands of flights every week. We get very used to kind of reading the tea leaves, seeing what pricing trends look like, seeing who's optimistic, who's pessimistic, and kind of going with the flow that way. So we felt really, really good about these predictions about opening. He's saying by August 31st, he expects Japan to be open. That's in spite of setbacks with Omicron, in spite of their kind of conservative reopening timeline. We do expect, because their vaccination rate's so high, because tourism is a large part of their economy, that they will start to open to vaccinated travelers in the latter half of the year. We're very excited about that. Europe
And
was already there, and we're expecting to get back there very quickly after the Omicron wave kind of passes.
and we're expecting this sort of travel boom later on this year because a lot of people have been cooped up for some time, or they've had to cancel or alter plans in these past couple of years. And it sounds like, according to you all, that people are kind of looking to go big this time around. They're pretty ambitious about their plans this year.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. Folks who had these kind of bucket list trips on their radar or had put them off are now realizing, that phrase, Italy will be there, London will be there. Well, it'll be there, but you might not be able to go. So folks are really ready to take that bucket list trip right now. We have a search function on our website, and what we've found is really interesting. A lot of our members are big, intrepid travelers who are looking to go off the beaten path pre-pandemic. Right now, we're looking at London, we're looking at Paris, we're looking at Rome. That's where people want to go. They want to go back to those big, awesome European cities that they love so much or they've dreamt about. They're not ready to go off the beaten path. They want to get right back on that beaten path.
That's interesting. So we're all about getting back into those population centers again that we've been trying to avoid these past couple of years.
That's absolutely right. People are excited to be in a bustling cafe. They're excited to be kind of squeezing into a museum with other people. Everyone's kind of playing touch and go. They're not quite sure when it's going to happen. We've had many members write in and say, I booked this trip through one of your deals in spring 2020. I moved it to spring 2021. Now I'm moving it to spring 2022. But folks are feeling more optimistic now that 2022 will be the year that a lot of folks make this happen.
Are we expecting, and I read through the predictions here, it looks like you guys have pretty good confidence that we are going to finally get back to not only pre-pandemic traffic airwise, but that we're going to go above what we saw in the summer of 2019. That's kind of a staggering thought, after all of these months of being able to actually get on an airplane and there's an empty seat next to you, which used to be unheard of.
Yeah, I'm someone who has traveled quite a bit this year, and I'm going to miss that empty seat. I've been enjoying that. But we've seen little glimmers of this already. We saw over Thanksgiving weekend numbers approached where they were in 2019. Over the Christmas holiday, actually on December 22nd, numbers were higher than they were in 2019. And we have all this pent up demand. Folks have thousands of dollars in airline credits and vouchers ready to spend. Those are going to expire at some point. People want to spend them. So we expect the skies to be very busy, and particularly for international air travel to kind of pick up again. Domestic air travel is already back. It's almost back to where it was pre-pandemic. We're expecting those international trips to really take off, particularly once Asia starts to open up to Americans again.
I'm glad that you mentioned those travel vouchers there, Willis, because I think that that's like a little gold bar that the airline hands you after you've had a particularly bad day with their service for whatever reason. But the funny thing with that gold bar is it's like we put it away in a safe and we kind of think it's just going to be there forever for us and it's just going to stay there. Or I don't know how, but I think people actually start to forget that it's there. And those things usually do have a sunset on them.
That's absolutely right. The airlines have been pretty decent about extending expiration dates. Delta just said, hey, all airline credits are now good through 2023. That's kind of industry leading. But we advise folks, if you booked a flight in 2020 or 2021 and ended up canceling it and taking that voucher, check your expiration date and then go on the airline's website and check to see if it's changed. They've not been great about letting folks know when they have changed. So, you might have something that's due to expire, assume that it's been pushed back and it's not, and then you'll be on the hook for $500 that you spent for nothing.
I want to ask you this because, we talked about pent up demand among flyers. There's got to be some pent up feelings with the airlines as well. And when we talk about people coming back in numbers that we haven't seen since 2019, we know that these airlines have suffered mightily. Number one, they've handed out all of these vouchers. They've had to cancel a lot of flights. They've had a lot of empty seats. They're looking to make their money back again. And when demand shoots up, like you guys are expecting it to in the summertime, we can probably expect that fares are going to follow that.
That's absolutely right. And that is one of the things that we did predict. We said we think that on average, fares will probably rise at least 10% over the course of 2022 over where they were. There's a couple of reasons for that. One of them is that during 2021, even though demand kind of skyrocketed at a certain point, supply grew faster. Airlines put a lot of big planes that were grounded back in the sky. So, we saw tons of demand to go down to Miami, for example. The airlines were moving these giant planes onto those routes, which made a lot of seats. It kind of outpaced demand and prices stayed low. We saw $98 round trip fares from Dallas down to Miami just this week. So those fares are still there in spite of the demand. Hotels are through the roof in Miami, but flights are still cheap. In 2022, there's not as much room to continue increasing that supply. Most of those planes are back in the sky, but demand is going to keep growing. So we should see prices rise on average quite a bit.
Willis, I went to Hawaii over the summer, along with it appears everybody else. Everybody had that same idea. And again, it was to get outside. It was to be, you were around people, but not so much because you're outdoors a lot. I know that the beach vacations were particularly popular. We had a lot of people fleeing to Cancun and the Caribbean, Hawaii. You guys are expecting prices on those to actually go up this time around.
That's absolutely right. So we expect to kind of see this kind of balancing act to happen. So these popular domestic and short-haul international warm weather destinations like Miami, Hawaii, Vegas even, we expect prices to go up there because, again, airlines, as the rest of the world opens up, as demand for overseas travel increases, are going to move some of those large planes back to those kind of long-haul routes, which will decrease supply a little bit. Demand's going to stay high, so we should see prices rise quite a bit.
And part of what's... Go ahead.
On the flip side, that kind of repositioning of planes, that reshuffling of routes should result in some great deals to Europe. And once Asia starts to open, Asia as well.
So there are deals to be had out there. And especially if you're, near a big airport like a DFW here, we've got Love Field and, Houston Intercontinental is not that far away if you have to opt for that. And there's good deals to be found.
That's absolutely right. So if you're in Dallas right now, we very recently saw Puerto Vallarta nonstop, $194 round trip. This is all major carriers. We're not talking about Spirit. We're not talking about Frontier. On major carriers, this is that effect we were saying. There's oversupply on that route into Puerto Vallarta. If you want a little bit of sunshine, you can get it for less than $200 round trip.
We'll have to remember that in February for sure. So I want to ask you this: is part of what's driving this? I mean, first of all, you're there in Costa Rica, living the life, a couple of blocks from the beach. Are you? I mean, you're talking to me. I'm assuming you're not doing this on your own time, so you're sort of a remote worker now, right?
Right, yeah.
And so many other people are as well. Is that part of what is driving this, that people actually have the freedom? They're not tethered to an office. They've got some extra time and they can go travel for maybe longer periods of time.
we really do think that a lot of folks, particularly folks who moved remote during the pandemic, are really ready to kind of drop their obligations at home and go and do what I do. I do this 3, 4, 5 months a year. I go off somewhere else in the world and I work from there. I've been doing it for years. I think a lot of the rest of the world is ready to do it. I'm interested to see, we've not seen data yet because we're still kind of in this touch and go pandemic era, but I'm interested to see how average trip lengths end up being. We're used to most Americans travel for about 5, 6 days at a time because you don't get a lot of vacation. I'm interested to see if there are more of these month-long trips going forward. I'd expect to see that.
Two more questions for you here. How closely should we be paying attention to cancellation policies with regards to airlines and, for that matter, hotels and what have you? How do you guys feel about that? Are airlines going to start to get strict on that again this year, or are they going to stay kind of lax?
Throughout 2021, most airlines kind of rolled back a small bit of their kind of wave change fee policy, where they said, hey, if you buy that bottom of the barrel basic economy fare, you're on the hook for change fees if you decide to change it. We don't expect them to go further than that. We expect the change fees to continue to be waived at least through 2022 on all tickets above basic economy. You're paying a premium to upgrade. For domestic and short haul flights, you really get nothing else for that other than choosing your seat. So you're paying for the privilege to change your flight down the road instead of paying a change fee. We tell folks, hey, keep an eye on the fine print. Make sure you keep your eye on it. We don't expect there to be major changes there for airlines. Hotels may change. I would say look at your online travel agents. If you're booking through a Priceline or Expedia, who really went the extra mile to make things more consumer friendly in terms of cancellation policies throughout the pandemic, keep an eye on those kind of sites to see if they start rolling things back. But we don't expect to see too much on the side of the airlines.
Kind of associated with that, though, Willis, I used to be the guy who never, ever opted to add the insurance to a trip. And I will tell you that has changed since the pandemic came along. And I buy the policies now. You travel a lot more than I do. What are your thoughts on that?
I'm personally not someone who buys insurance policies in general, and I'm traveling with a small child. I'd just be a fool. But that said, one of the things I do look at those, those wave change fee policies, and I say, hey, if I can lock that in for, say, a flight with JetBlue, I'll lock it in for $50 round trip. I know that I have the freedom to move this ticket around if I want to. I don't have to worry about anything else. I can do that voluntarily. I don't need to give them a reason. I don't need to worry about paying, for insurance and then filing a claim later for reimbursement. It's an easier process for me. If you're someone who's booking a big, involved vacation with many, many non-refundable components, then that's when I think it's a good idea to look into insurance.
Okay.
If you're fine by the seat of your pants, don't worry about it.
Yeah. So if you're scooping up a lot of, too great to pass up deals, but it just so happens that they're not cancelable, that's when you want to start looking at insurance.
That's absolutely right. Yeah, exactly. So you're booking these things, you can't get your money back. Otherwise, look for somebody who will back you up.
I lied. My last two questions turned into four. I've got one more for you here. It's the last one, I promise. Mistake fares, because I think a lot of people, obvious, you can just tell by what that's called, what it is. But a lot of people really don't know about this. This is one of the things that you all specialize in. In fact, it sort of led to the founding of Scott's Cheap Flights. Tell us a little bit about what mistake fares are and why it is that you all are expecting that we're going to have more of those in 2022. And how do we find them?
So mistake fares are my favorite thing in the world. I spend 40 hours a week looking at cheap flights. When something goes haywire, when an airline, for example, leaves a zero off a price, or they miscode a business class flight as an economy flight, or what have you, something happens within their system that causes the wrong price to be posted. We saw a $23 round trip flight from Boston to Puerto Rico. We saw, I think it was $27 from Baltimore out to Salt Lake City. These kind of things, $63 from Atlanta down to Santiago, Chile. One of my coworkers actually took that flight. These things happen. And when they happen, they're fleeting. They happen very quickly. Airlines don't have to honor them. So you go ahead, you book it, and you wait and see if they're going to honor it. Give them 2 or 3 days to see what they decide to do. But we're expecting to see more of these because we're expecting to be in a very competitive environment where airlines are kind of onboarding a lot of people really fast. So new staff, fat fingers, it happens all the time. We actually saw it earlier in this year when American kind of did this big ramping up in staff because they were caught with their pants down, had a bunch of cancellations over the summer. They brought a lot of folks on, and in 2 days we saw that they had 3 mistake fares. They didn't honor any of them, but they did have 3 mistake fares in 2 days. And we can't say cause and effect, but we can say this is pretty suspicious. When they're ramping things up very, very quickly, mistakes get made. So we're hoping.
Do they honor them sometimes, though? Do you see them honor them sometimes?
Yeah, I'd say about 35-40% of the time they're honored. It's a good PR move. So that flight down to Chile, that was honored. My coworker took it. $63 round trip. Others do not. It's really, really a crapshoot. They don't have to, but it's a tough thing for an airline to do. When American went and they just sent these mass emails out to customers, hundreds, maybe thousands of people booked them and said, sorry, not sorry, you're not taking that trip. They have to weigh the costs and benefits to doing that.
If you question that when they don't decide to honor that, is there a chance that maybe they, give you a little extra something else?
We always encourage our members to, if they're going to have a conversation with the customer service rep, ask about it, because there is a chance, especially if you are, say, a frequent flyer with that airline, say you have some points with that airline, you have to do something to kind of lessen the blow for you for losing out on that fare, maybe an upgrade in your next flight, maybe a lounge pass, something along those lines. It's always a good idea to ask when you've been or slighted by the airline.
When y'all post stuff about mistake fares, I imagine that probably gets a ton of hits.
It is without a doubt the most popular thing we send, and we only saw 9 of them in 2021. 9 of them. I think I sent 4 of them. I was really excited to do it, but I really want to be part of it more because we see the testimonials coming in. People are clicking reply and saying, I got it, I'm crossing my fingers. And then, when they are canceled, we have this time where we get to talk to our members about what their choices are. And it's a good time to build a relationship. And when they actually go off, folks write us, a year later, 6 months later, and say, here I am in Chile, here I am in Patagonia. I could afford to do this because I found this mistake fare.
That is great. Sometimes a mistake can really pay off. All right, my last 2 questions turned into like 40 more, so I have to let you go now so that you can continue, quote unquote, working a couple of blocks away from the beach there in Costa Rica. Senior Product Operations Specialist, Willis Orlando with Scott's Cheap Flights. Thanks for doing this with us. Really appreciate your time.
Always happy to do it.
Have fun for me down there, okay?
I will do.
All right, bye-bye. Thanks.
Yeah, bye.